Three teenagers vanished without a trace in the deep forest in 1998. No one returned, and no one knew what happened. 25 years later, a hidden camera captures a strange figure bearing the face of someone long lost, rekindling a nightmare thought buried. A sister returns, determined to step into the heart of the obsession, where memories, truth, and a nameless evil intertwine into a deadly maze. October in Ash Pines always arrives like a whisper, unhurried, quiet, silently scattering gold over the dense pine ridges and exhaling the bone-chilling cold of northern Montana's mountains. But for Nora Hart, autumn was never just the season of falling leaves. It was the season of memories, of grief, and of questions that never found answers. This year marks exactly 25 years since her younger brother Logan Hart disappeared with his two best friends, Mikey Dunn and Travis Espinoza. Three teenagers, 16 and 17 years old, healthy, cheerful, and passionate about exploration, never returned from a weekend hiking trip in Bitter Wilds National Park, a pristine forest locals still whisper about as the place where time stands still. That morning, the sky was clear without a single cloud. Nora stood on the porch, seeing Logan off, reminding him to wear an extra jacket and watch out for bears. He grinned wide, backpack slung over his shoulder, giving her a thumbs up. "Don't worry, sis, we'll be back before dark on Sunday." But Sunday passed, then Monday, Tuesday, until the first search team's flashlights pierced the forest, and every trace had already sunk deep into the moss and decayed earth. Not a shred of cloth, not a compass, not even a footprint remained. Over 300 people joined the effort. Helicopters circled day and night, search dogs scoured the canyons. But after 2 weeks, the search officially ended, leaving the boys' families in the silence of despair. Each family grieved in their own way. The Dunns chose silence, the Espinosas moved out of town, and the Harts, now just Nora, after her parents passed in the years that followed, braced themselves against an unnamed emptiness. Some mornings she'd jolt awake, thinking she heard Logan calling from the kitchen. Some nights, she'd stare out the window, imagining his silhouette moving through the fog stretching across the backyard. People say time heals, but some wounds only scab over, never truly healing. This year, for the first time in nearly a decade, Nora returned to Ash Pines on the anniversary of the disappearance. She stood before the old house where she and Logan grew up, now weathered by moss and marked with a for sale sign. The window still bore a crack from 2002, when a strong wind snapped a tree branch. She recalled her mother's eyes the day the police called, clouded, trembling, then utterly empty. She remembered sleepless nights, sitting in the living room, hands clutching a forest map, red lines marking every place they'd searched. People gradually stopped looking. But Nora never stopped remembering. From her jacket pocket, she pulled out a small faded photo of the three boys taken at Mikey's birthday in 1997. They stood side by side in front of a canvas tent, sunlight filtering through the leaves, illuminating their messy hair and carefree smiles. Looking into her brother's eyes in the photo, Nora felt something stir, not quite sadness, but a kind of premonition. She didn't believe Logan was dead. Despite all evidence to the contrary, her heart held onto a small corner of hope. Because without hope, what had all these years meant? Ash Pines seemed unchanged, a quiet little town nestled in a valley, where people greeted each other in passing, and rumors spread faster than the wind. But Nora had changed. She was no longer the young girl from back then, but a woman who'd learned to carry grief through life without letting it drown her. Stepping into the town's old coffee shop, now called Blue Pine Roast, a young barista smiled at her, unaware that this was once where Logan sat reading comics on rainy days. Everything had changed, except the truth, which still hadn't surfaced. As she left the shop, Nora heard the chime of wind chimes tinkling by the road. A strong gust blew through, carrying the damp scent of pine resin, and for a split second, she turned back, instinctively, as if someone had whispered her name from deep within. But there was no one, just the rustling of forest trees and heavy gray clouds drifting silently. Then, in the quiet of an Ash Pines afternoon, a sudden notification pinged on Nora's phone. "You need to see this." It was recorded less than a mile from where Logan disappeared. The sender, Emil Saunders, an ecology student she'd never met. A chill shot from Nora's wrist to her spine. Could it be, after 25 years, the forest was finally speaking? Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated with the latest stories. That morning, Montana's sky was draped in a light mist, like thin smoke curling through the pine forest. Emil Saunders stood before his laptop screen at a survey camp deep in Bitter Wilds National Park, eyes glued to the black and white footage playing frame by frame from an infrared camera. At nearly 2 a.m., the lens shook slightly. Then a blurry shadow appeared at the left edge of the frame, not clear, but enough to make him bolt upright from his chair. The movement was fleeting, like a human figure standing motionless among dense trees, almost directly aligned with Trail 3. The area marked in 1998 as the last known location of Logan Hart's footprints. Emil replayed it. This time, he paused and zoomed in on the movement. The figure stood still for nearly 12 seconds, unmoving. No clear heat signature, but the posture wasn't like a wild animal, nor was it the wind rustling branches. Shoulders straight, head slightly tilted, arms hanging at its sides, like someone listening to something. Emil swallowed hard. He'd lived and studied in forests for years, and he knew no creature stands like that in the dead of night, in freezing cold, except a human. But this forest had been closed to camping for years due to conservation restrictions. The only people allowed in at night were rangers, and they wore signal-emitting gear. This image, nameless, without a code, couldn't be easily explained. "Have you sent this to Dr. Marlin yet?" April Chen, his fellow surveyor, asked from behind. Emil turned, nodded, but didn't take his eyes off the screen. "Still looking. Something's off." April stepped closer, frowning at the footage. "Looks human?" she asked. Emil stayed silent, replaying it again. This time, they both saw it. At the 23rd second, the figure turned its head to stare directly at the lens. Not clearly, but the movement was real, a slow nod, then it vanished into the darkness on the right, as if it had never been there. "That can't be random," Emil whispered. April gripped her hands tightly. "That's the western edge, where those kids went missing, right?" Emil nodded. "About a kilometer from the last recorded spot, but right on Trail 3. They fell silent for a moment. The late autumn insects chirping outside sounded like echoes from distant memories. Emil opened his notes folder, digging up a scanned 1990s forest map from old ranger records. The camera's location was less than 500 meters from Bitterwild's rest stop, where the three boys had last camped. "Maybe," April started, then stopped. "Say it," Emil urged. "Could one of them still be alive?" Emil sighed. "After 25 years, no traces, no signals, no news, hard to believe. But cameras don't lie." That afternoon, Emil sent the footage and coordinates to the Northern Mountain Ecology Center for verification and equipment maintenance. But he couldn't sit still. Something pushed him to dig deeper. He began researching the 1998 disappearance case, known to all as Ash Pine's chilling mystery. Old yellowed news articles appeared on his screen. 3 teens vanish without a trace, police helpless. Trail 3, Bitterwild's curse. One notable 2003 local magazine piece quoted residents near the area. "That night, someone heard screams echoing in the forest, long then broken, like someone calling a name. But when police arrived, they found nothing but wet cracked rocks and a few broken branches." Emil converted the video into frame-by-frame screenshots, enhanced the brightness, and compared them to archival photos of the missing teens. One thing chilled him: the shoulder width, height, and vague posture in the video matched Logan Hart at 16 almost perfectly. Emil stood, opened a printed map, marked the camera's coordinates, and circled accessible points near Trail 3. There were 4 in total, one being Clearwater Basin, a deep valley sealed off since 2001 due to unidentified biological activity. He decided he'd go there, even if alone. But first, he needed to do something else. Contact the only living person tied to the case by blood, Nora Hart. Somehow, he found her email through old Civilian Investigation Board records. His message was brief. "I'm Emil Saunders, from Montana State's Ecology Research Team. I think you need to see this video recorded near where your brother disappeared. Something's not right." 3 hours later, as night fell over Bitterwilds, Emil got a reply. "I'm coming. Don't leave the area. If you're right, this forest has never been silent." As the off-road vehicle rolled past the weathered wooden gate of Bitterwilds National Park, Nora felt like she was entering a piece of memory she'd tried to lock away for years. The towering, dense pines, so thick they choked out the light, stood there motionless and silent, as if time had forgotten this place. The tires crunched over decayed leaves, producing a brittle, eerie sound that made her shudder. Emil sat beside her in the driver's seat, holding a printed map, pointing to red-marked spots. "From here it's about a kilometer's walk to the camera's location," he said, voice low as if afraid to wake something sleeping in the ancient forest. Nora didn't reply. She was staring out the window, where blackened tree trunks flashed by like countless nameless shadows. Part of her wanted to turn the car around and leave immediately. But her mind screamed, if there's one last chance, it's now. They stopped at a narrow, moss and gravel-covered trail. Emil carefully locked the doors and pulled 2 backpacks, flashlights, a recorder, and an emergency signal device from the trunk. Nora stood still for a moment, closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. The air smelled musty, sharp and frigid, though the sun hadn't yet set. "This place doesn't feel like a forest," she said softly. Emil looked at her, nodding slowly. "I feel it too." They began moving, stepping cautiously over uneven terrain, the occasional snap of a rotten branch echoing. The forest birds didn't sing. The wind didn't blow. Everything seemed to hold its breath. And that silence was what scared Nora most. As a child, she and Logan had picnicked here with their parents. Back then, the forest was alive, with rustling leaves, scampering squirrels, and gurgling streams. Now, each step felt like sinking deeper into a dead dream. It took nearly 40 minutes to reach the camera's location, a massive pine with tangled roots and moss, where Emil had set up the device 3 weeks earlier. He unlocked the weatherproof steel box, removed the memory card, and inserted it into a tablet he'd brought. The screen showed 5 short videos, each 30 to 45 seconds, triggered by motion sensors. Nora crouched beside him, her heart pounding. Emil played the latest clip. The same scene, pitch-black foliage, ground blanketed in thick fog, and then, the shadow. Hazy, almost transparent, but clear enough to make out a human shape, standing upright, facing the camera. Nora exhaled sharply, speechless. She knew that posture. Left shoulder slightly lower than the right. Logan had injured his left shoulder at 14 in a rollerblading accident. It couldn't be mistaken, but after 25 years? How? Emil switched to the next clip. The shadow stood closer, head moving slightly, as if listening. Then, in the final frames, it turned to stare directly at the lens, before vanishing behind a tree. "This can't be a prank," Nora said, her lips paling. This defies all reason." Emil checked his watch. "We should leave before dark." But just as he spoke, a faint sound broke through the forest, a soft crack, like someone stepping on a dry branch. Both spun around. No one, nothing. Just the fading afternoon light, turning the forest into a maze of endless stretching shadows. They quickly packed up and retreated. Back at the car, Nora realized her hands were shaking. Emil gripped the steering wheel, silent for a long moment before saying, "I used to think forests were safe, places where ecosystems followed logical patterns. But here, no rules apply." Nora stared straight ahead at the road. "Because this forest has seen something we don't yet understand." They drove to a temporary lodge in town. Dinner was brief. Neither could eat much. In a small room with stained walls and a window facing the mountain range, Nora sat at a table, opened her phone, and for the first time in years, dug through her folder on Logan. Old photos, diaries, news clippings, even a thank you letter from the police, after she donated to the search team in 2002. A notification blinked from Emil. "Tomorrow, I want to try finding the 1998 campsite. It's only about 1.2 miles from the camera, per the map. You might want to come." Nora replied instantly. "I'm not going to find the dead, I'm going to find the truth. The forest may not speak, but we'll make it answer." That night, for the first time in nearly a quarter century, she dreamed of her brother, standing in the forest, his face unclear, but his hand reaching out, as if waiting for her to take it. As she reached for him, a crack sounded. A branch snapped, and she woke, heart pounding. Outside, the forest remained silent, but she knew it was listening. The next morning, faint sunlight slanted through the thick fog of bitterwilds, as if hesitant to penetrate the place. Nora stood at the trail's edge, staring into the cold mist, where every branch and moss-covered patch looked like the weathered skin of an ancient creature. Emil approached from behind, holding a map and a GPS device, his backpack heavy with survey tools. "If the 1998 campsite has any traces left, it'll be north of Trail 3, past that rocky slope," he said, pointing into the deep forest. Nora didn't reply, silently following him, each step sinking into the damp, decayed earth. Her feet remembered every path, every turn, as if carrying the memories of her childhood. Right here, she and Logan had skipped stones in the creek, roasted marshmallows over a campfire, and argued over who got to sleep near the tent's edge. Those memories now felt like echoes from another world, one dissolved into the mist and swallowed by this forest. They moved slowly, scanning the terrain for any sign of past human presence. Emil occasionally stopped, recording quick notes on a handheld device. At a low patch of ground, he paused, pointing down. See this indent? Could be a tent's foundation. Nora knelt, touching the moss. Beneath it, she felt compacted earth, possibly once a campsite. Her heart raced. This could be where Logan spent his last night. Emil moved to a nearby rocky outcrop, shining his flashlight on a scratch mark on a flat stone. Look at this, Nora approached. Etched faintly, nearly worn away by time, were the letters T.I.L., the initials of Travis, Mikey, and Logan. She pressed her hand to the carving, as if trying to send an unspoken message through the stone. Maybe they carved it the night before they vanished, Emil said softly. A way to mark their spot or leave a memory. Nora shook her head. No, Logan wasn't the sentimental type. Unless he sensed danger. Emil fell silent, then pulled a handheld magnetic scanner from his backpack, used to detect buried metal. After a few minutes of sweeping the area, it emitted a faint, steady beep. Something's here, he said. They dug by hand, brushing aside layers of wet moss and earth. Within 10 minutes, they hit a small, rusted tin box. Nora shivered as Emil carefully opened it, revealing a folded piece of paper, a corroded AA battery, and a necklace with a bullet-shaped pendant engraved with M. Mikey, Nora whispered. She unfolded the paper, its handwritten words faded but legible. If someone finds this, we didn't make it back. Something's in the forest. It doesn't sleep. Logan said it knows his name. Emil scanned it, then looked at Nora, his eyes flickering. Could be a hallucination, panic, or disorientation. But Nora shook her head. No, my brother didn't believe in superstitions. If he wrote this, he had a reason. They sat quietly by the rock for a long time, each lost in thought. Emil considered natural infrasound phenomena, capable of causing hallucinations, insomnia, or paranoia. But Nora felt only one thing. Logan's memory was here, not dead, but never having left this place. The sun began dipping west, its light slicing through the forest like thin blades. Emil stood. We should head back before dark. The trek out isn't short. But as they packed up, a strange sound echoed, a steady tapping, like someone lightly striking a tree with metal. 3 taps. A pause. 3 more. Nora spun around, eyes wide. Emil gripped his GPS tightly. The sound came from the north, not far off. They saw nothing, just forest. But that sound, it couldn't be an animal. It couldn't be the wind. They held their breath. Again, 3 taps. Tap, tap. Then, a faint whisper, wordless but rhythmic, like someone humming silently. A chill ran from Nora's feet to her neck. She turned to Emil. We have to come back. Soon. And next time, we bring a night recorder. Emil nodded, his eyes tense but resolute. We haven't gone deep enough. The truth isn't here yet. On the way back to the car, Nora glanced back one last time toward the old campsite. She felt someone watching her, not threatening, but waiting. As if the forest was finally speaking after 25 years of silence. And this time, she was ready to listen. That night, as Nora and Emil returned to the temporary lodge on the edge of ash pines, the sky was pitch black, moonless, starless, like a thick curtain draped over the entire Bitterwilds range. Emil barely spoke during the drive back, his hand still tightly clutching the memory card, freshly retrieved from camera number 2, a device he'd set up less than a mile from the first camera, near the edge of Clearwater Valley. That area had seen no exploration since 2001, sealed off due to unusual geological activity. After a hurried, cold dinner of canned noodles, they returned to their room. Emil opened his laptop and connected the memory card. Nora stood behind him, arms crossed tightly, eyes tense. The screen displayed a list of 3 video clips, each under a minute long. Emil played the first one. The night appeared, hazy and colorless. For the first 15 seconds, only the wind stirred the branches, then suddenly, a motion flashed across the frame, so fast it was nearly impossible to discern its shape. Slow it down, Nora whispered. Emil complied. This time, they saw it, a short figure, hunched over, head tilted to the right, dragging something with its hand. But the strangeness wasn't in that. It was in the eyes. For a few frames, the figure's eyes reflected light, glinting like a cat's, but with a cold, golden hue, and motionless. That's not an animal, Emil whispered. Nora held her breath. The way it moves, stiff, like it's being controlled. They moved to the second clip. This time, the dark figure stood still, motionless. It faced away from the lens, about 10 steps from the camera. The surroundings were utterly silent. No insects, no wind. The trees stood frozen like a dead painting. After about 20 seconds, the figure slowly turned its head, not its body, just its neck. Very slowly, very deeply, and this time, they saw the face clearly. It was a teenage boy's face, pale, with sunken eye sockets, like hollows in stone. Wet, matted hair. But the features, chillingly familiar. Emil opened an old photo of Logan Hart from 1997. Same hairstyle. Same small birthmark on the left cheek. Same sharp, angular face. The boy in the video bore an eerie resemblance to Logan. Nora was speechless. She sank into a chair, her heart pounding like a war drum. It felt like someone had ripped open a door she'd kept locked in her heart for 25 years. It can't be. If this is Logan, how? Emil shook his head. It could be someone who looks similar. Or, he didn't dare finish. They played the third video. The scene was darker, blurrier, as if thick fog had settled. The figure now stood close to the camera, less than 2 meters away. It didn't move, just stared for a long time. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, unblinking, motionless. Then, it raised a hand, bony and gaunt, and pointed at the lens. No words, just a single point. At that moment, the camera glitched, the image pixelated, then went black. Signal failure, Emil muttered. Could be electromagnetic interference, or someone tampering with the device. Nora clenched her fists. It can't be someone. No one knew that camera was there, except you. Emil nodded. He began backing up the video, simultaneously running a facial recognition program, though he knew the low-quality night footage wouldn't provide enough data to confirm an identity. I'll send this to a computer vision expert at the university, he said. But it'll take at least 3 days. 3 days, and everything could disappear, Nora said, her voice firm. We have to go back. Tomorrow morning. Emil stared at her. You sure? This time, we'll be going deeper. I've been going deep in my mind for 25 years. Now it's time to go deep into the truth. That night, Nora barely slept. Her mind was consumed by that face. Her brother's face, once full of smiles, now empty, motionless, like a soulless copy. But deep in those eyes, she saw a buried plea for help, not from some monstrous entity, but from a child who once dreamed of being a pilot, who wrote diaries in blue ink, who cried when a teacher misunderstood him. Her Logan. But, if that boy was still alive, who or what had kept him in the forest all these years? And if it wasn't Logan, what was it? And why did it wear her brother's face? Before closing her eyes, Nora opened her phone and jotted a quick note. Tomorrow, we return to Clearwater. Even if the forest swallows everything, I won't let my brother's memory die again. The next morning, the fog still lingered as Nora and Emil returned to the trail leading toward Clearwater Valley. A gloomy area, virtually untouched, since it was sealed off for unstable geological conditions. Both were fully equipped, infrared flashlights, a recorder, a hand-drawn map, a compass, and an emergency climbing rope. Emil said nothing during the journey. His face was pale from lack of sleep, his eyes constantly darting toward the ancient forest, where the camera had captured the figure with Logan's face. Nora wasn't faring much better. She walked quickly, not letting herself think too much. Only one thought was clear: if her brother had been held in this forest, now was the time to take him back, no matter how. Around noon, they reached a flat clearing among 3 ancient pines, right at the foot of Clearwater's slope, where an old map marked Clearwater Lookout Post, a forest observation station from the 1970s. Now just a pile of broken stone. Nora was the first to spot a clue: a large rock with man-made carvings on its underside, half buried in the earth. She crouched, scraping away moss and dirt with a knife, then called, "Come look at this." Emil rushed over and knelt beside her. On the rock, a faint carving emerged. 1998, TML. The second time they'd seen these initials, after the carving on the stone the day before. Emil quickly scanned the area with a magnetic detector. It emitted a steady beeping. "There's metal under this soil," he said. They began digging, not with a shovel, but by hand, as the earth here was soft and decayed. Nearly half an hour later, Nora's fingers touched a cold, hard surface. She gasped as she pulled up an old, dented, rusted tin box, its lid still intact. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a thick stack of papers bound with a rotted rubber band, a Zippo lighter, 2 AA batteries, and a faded photograph. Nora pulled out the photo first. It showed three teenagers, Logan, Mikey and Travis, sitting in front of a tent, sunlight filtering through the leaves above them. But something was off about their expressions, unlike typical teens on a camping trip. Mikey was staring off to the right, eyes wide with fear. Travis was gripping his backpack straps tightly. Only Logan looked straight at the camera, but his eyes held no spark, just an empty, chilling stare. Nora swallowed hard, set the photo down, and opened the stack of papers. The first page was in Travis Espinosa's shaky handwriting. "If someone finds this, we might not make it out. Something's watching us. Not a forest animal, not a person. It makes no sound. It just stands there, waiting." The next pages were fragmented entries, spaced days apart. Night 3, Logan says someone called his name in the middle of the night, but we didn't hear anything. He keeps repeating, "I know that voice." Night 6, Mikey says he saw a shadow standing behind the tent. "We ran out, but there was nothing." But the rocks around the tent were disturbed. There was a footprint in the moss, with only 3 toes. Nora paused, her hand gripping the paper's edge. It felt like she was touching a stolen piece of memory, not hers, but of the boys who never came back. Emil quickly scanned the final entry. "Logan doesn't sleep anymore. He says it chose him. He's not scared. He says if we have to go, we need to leave something for someone to find. And this morning, he was gone." The last page was scrawled in trembling handwriting. "Mikey and I are burying this box. If someone finds it, tell our families we tried. But it won't let us escape." The air around them seemed to thicken. No more wind, no more rustling leaves. Only Nora's heartbeat pounded in her ears, like a call rising from the earth. Emil whispered, "They didn't die from getting lost. They were watched, chosen." Nora looked up, eyes brimming with tears, but her gaze was sharp as a blade. "I know Logan. He wouldn't vanish without leaving a sign. He fought, he left clues, and he might still be waiting." Emil nodded. "We have to keep going. Follow Travis's note. Broken Rock Ridge, east of the canyon." They carefully packed the tin box into a bag, marking the spot with GPS and a red cloth strip. As they stood, Nora instinctively glanced west, where the trees' shadows wove strange shapes in the fog. For a fleeting moment, she saw a figure standing between 2 trees, silent, still. But when she looked again, it was gone. Nora said nothing. She just walked faster, her voice soft in the ancient forest. "Logan, I'm coming. You don't have to wait alone anymore." That midnight, in the small lodge room lit only by a dim yellow desk lamp, Nora quietly spread the papers from the tin box on the table, using a hairdryer to dry the water-damaged sections. Each of Travis's scrawled lines cut like a blade, not just into her mind, but into the history of a case Ash Pines had hastily buried for years. She felt it clearly. Something in the initial investigation had been obscured, or worse, deliberately distorted. Emil sat beside her, typing rapidly on his laptop. Before him was a series of articles and old police records he'd accessed through Montana's 1990s press archives. "Nora," he called softly. "Did you know the initial report on the disappearance had at least 3 different versions?" She looked up. "Different how?" Emil turned the screen. "The October 14th, 1998, report, filed by a patrol officer named Wade Collier, stated clearly that he saw 3 teenagers near the old lookout post at dusk on the 13th, a day after they were reported missing." Nora frowned. "But the public record says they vanished the night of the 12th, and no one saw them after." "Exactly," Emil nodded. The official report was altered, omitting Collier's statement. But the original, briefly published in the Ash Pines Tribune on October 16th, included that detail. It was retracted 24 hours later. Nora exhaled, her heart racing. Who had the authority to tamper with an investigation report? Emil was silent for a moment, then said, "The town sheriff at the time, Raymond Eckhart. He retired in 2009. She stood. "I want to talk to him." The next morning, they found the old wooden house at the end of Boulder Creek Street, where Raymond Eckhart lived alone after his wife's passing. When the door opened, Nora saw an aged man, gaunt, with white, wispy hair and cloudy eyes. "You're?" he asked. "Nora Hart. Logan's sister." Eckhart froze, gripping the door's edge. "I have nothing to say." "We do," Nora cut in. "We found Travis Espinosa's handwritten journal, and a report you had altered." Eckhart stared at them for a long moment, then opened the door wider. "Come in." The cluttered, dusty living room still held an air of dignity. He poured coffee for the three of them and sat, leaning on a cane. "I don't regret hiding it," he said, voice hoarse. "No regrets?" Nora clenched her fists. 3 teenagers vanished. "What gave you the right to conceal evidence?" Eckhart closed his eyes briefly, then replied, "Because I'd seen it before. I was a patrol officer in Bitterwilds in 1973. That night, my rapid response team searched for a missing researcher, Howard Kell." He paused, then continued. "We found him, less than 50 meters from the old lookout post, but he wasn't himself, sitting under a tree, eyes wide, muttering something, like a song. When I got close, he stared at me and said, 'It doesn't let anyone leave until it chooses a replacement.'" Emil and Nora sat motionless. Eckhart went on, "Kell never recovered. He died in an asylum the next year. I never forgot his eyes. Something in that forest, it's ancient. It doesn't just kill, it chooses." He paused, coughed, then looked straight at Nora. "When those 3 kids vanished in 1998, I knew it was back." Nora was silent. "So instead of protecting the town, you hid the truth?" Eckhart shook his head. "I couldn't explain what I didn't understand. If I spoke, the town would have panicked. Who'd believe it? A retired sheriff with a ghost story?" Emil asked. "And the witness, Wade Collier?" "I told him to stay quiet, gave him early retirement with compensation." Eckhart sighed. "I thought it wouldn't happen again." Nora stood, her gaze cold as steel. "But it did, and now we're the ones chasing the truth." On the way back, Emil said, "If there's a cycle, 25 years isn't random." Nora nodded. "And if it chose Logan, it might be looking for a replacement now." Emil glanced at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I'm not sure. But something in that forest, it doesn't want to be forgotten. It needs witnesses." Back at the lodge, the sun was high, but the sky remained heavy and gray. Nora reopened the tin box, rereading Travis's final words. "If no one escapes, at least someone will know we saw the truth. And that truth has no shape. It wears the face of the one you love most." Nora closed the papers and turned to Emil. "There's no turning back. If we want to free Logan, we have to go to the deepest part of the forest." Emil swallowed hard. "Clearwater Basin." Nora nodded. "Exactly. And this time, if I don't come back, you have to bring the truth to light, whatever it is." Outside the window, the wind began to rise, swirling through the pines like the hiss of 1,000 whispering voices. In that brief moment, Nora felt it clearly. The forest knew they were coming, and this time, it was waiting. 2 days later, as Montana's sky turned a deep leaden gray and Bitterwild sank into thick fog, Nora and Emil began their journey to the spot circled in red ink on Logan's old map. It was a location absent from any official map, east of Clearwater Basin, an area sealed since 2001, vaguely referred to in Logan's notes as Cabin X. They had only faint directions from the map in the tin box and hand-carved symbols from an old pine. The path they took had no trail. The deeper they went, the denser the trees grew, their moss-covered trunks and interwoven branches like a labyrinthine dream. Emil led with a compass and GPS, but the device kept flickering, losing signal. Both were sweating in the biting cold, as if the forest was trying to pull them back, each branch reaching to snag their limbs. "We're close," Emil said softly, stopping at a slippery slope. "The map says there's a small clearing after this." They climbed over a mossy rock outcrop, and as they descended, a sight froze them in place. Nestled in a hollow was a rotting wooden cabin, its slanted roof and moss-covered walls boarded up with old planks. Though dilapidated, it stood there, silent and still, like a witness to something never told. "On Logan's map, this is it," Nora whispered. Emil stepped closer, gently pushing the creaking wooden door. It opened with a long grating groan, like the breath of a forgotten thing waking up. Inside, it was pitch black, reeking of damp mold and rusted iron. They switched on their flashlights. Beneath a thick layer of dust, the wooden floor remained intact. A small table with a broken leg sat in one corner, next to a toppled chair, and at the far end was an old, tattered backpack covered in cobwebs. Nora rushed to it, hands trembling as she unzipped it. Inside was a pair of kids' Reebok sneakers, and Nora recognized them instantly. "They're Mikey's," she said softly. "He begged his mom for weeks to get these." The shoes were soaked, the soles caked with mud and dark, dried stains, like blood. Emil looked at Nora, his eyes confirming this was no longer a misunderstanding. They were standing at the final point of the 3 boys in 1998. On the cabin's walls, beneath layers of mold and moss, were scrawled charcoal words, "Don't sleep, don't look in its eyes." Logan went outside. Suddenly, Nora noticed the floor. In the center was a square wooden panel, a different color from the rest of the boards. Emil knelt, prying it up with a knife. A small hollow appeared below, not deep, only about half a meter. Inside was a nylon-wrapped notebook, a box of matches, and a floral-patterned handkerchief. Nora opened the notebook. On the first page, in Travis's handwriting, "We're here, no one believes us. Logan says there's a way out, only when it sleeps. But Mikey couldn't take it anymore." The following pages chronicled their days trapped. Day 8, no one has water left. Mikey's feverish. Logan hears voices every night, saying he has to go outside to balance things. He believes it. Day 10, Logan vanished in the night. Mikey and I locked the door, but in the morning, it was open. There were 3 toed footprints outside. Mikey cried all morning. Day 12, I don't think Mikey made it. He said, "Travis, if you survive, tell them we didn't run. We were pulled by the forest itself." Nora could no longer hold back. Tears streamed down, falling onto the yellowed pages. Emil gently placed a hand on her shoulder, but she didn't react. She was seeing Logan again, her brother, who dreamed of being a musician, who hid behind her during thunderstorms, now reaching out through every written word, like a call from a place deeper than any abyss. Suddenly, Emil's flashlight flickered, not from a dying battery, but from something reflecting light in a corner. He swung the beam over. A round mirror eye embedded in the wall, nearly hidden by cobwebs and moss. A camera? But what kind? Emil stepped closer, brushing away mold and dirt. It was a small industrial lens, connected to a cable buried deep in the wall. "Someone was watching this place," Emil said hoarsely. "Not field equipment. This is research grade or surveillance." Nora was stunned, meaning they knew. Someone knew. Outside, the wind picked up. The forest rustled like waves crashing against the cabin's wooden door, and somewhere in the air, there was a faint breath, soft, distant, but undeniably present. Emil looked at Nora, eyes wide. "We're no longer just observers." Nora gripped the notebook tightly. "No, now we're witnesses, and that means we've been chosen." The forest rain poured down suddenly, without warning from wind or thunder, just a deafening rush, and the world around Nora and Emil became a cold, dense curtain of water. The wooden cabin trembled under fierce gusts, its leaking roof dripping onto the moldy boards below like a countdown clock. Emil quickly used nylon tarps to cover the critical evidence, while Nora still clutched Travis's notebook, her eyes fixed on the final line. "It's waiting for the next one." But as Emil finished packing the gear, his flashlight swept over another corner near the wall's base, where an odd stone protruded from the dirt floor. Nora frowned. "Wait, what's a stone doing in the middle of the floor?" Emil knelt, scraping away the surrounding soil with a small shovel. It wasn't a stone, it was a rectangular object, sealed in opaque plastic, buried under dried mud. As he pulled it up, the rotted plastic tore, revealing a thin, waterlogged notebook, heavy with the stench of mold. Nora could barely breathe. She recognized it instantly. Logan's notebook. No mistake, it was the small gray-green brand their mother bought in bulk for his diaries. A scrap of red paper was still taped to the corner, Logan's personal mark for his special notebooks. Her hand shook as she opened the first page. The black ink was still legible, though many lines were blurred. Day 1, I'm not sure this should be written down, but if someone finds this notebook, at least they'll know what we thought. Day 2, Travis dreamed of someone standing outside. I heard my name called too. Not loud, but clear. It was Dad's voice. But Dad died last year.
Day 4.
Mikey's starting to panic. He wants to go back, but the old path is gone. GPS doesn't work. The compass spins constantly. We walked in a circle, ended up right back here. Day 6. I can't sleep. There's something in the forest. I saw its shadow, standing far off, between 2 trees. It's tall, so tall, but it doesn't move. I blinked, and it was gone. The rain poured relentlessly outside, but both forgot the weather's existence. Each of Logan's words pulled them deeper into a trance, into a world where reason was bent by something alien and primal. Day 8. Travis tried to light a fire, but the wood won't burn. Mikey heard singing. I heard laughter, but we saw no one. Day 9. It spoke to me, not with words, with images. I close my eyes, and it shows me my memories. Things I never told anyone. I saw Mom, I saw Nora, and I saw myself, standing in the forest, but it wasn't me. Nora read to that point, her eyes blurring with rain and tears. Emil placed a hand on her shoulder, as if to pull her from the blood-soaked memories enveloping them. But she shook her head and kept reading. Day 11, Mikey ran off. I couldn't stop him. Travis screamed and cried. I want to give up too, but it says I'm chosen. I'm the gatekeeper. I don't understand. Day 12, Travis is asleep. I'm writing down everything I can remember. If I don't come back, Nora, if you read this, don't come here. Don't try to save me, because I'm no longer me. The final page was a long streak of ink, as if Logan's hand trembled too much to continue. Perhaps he stopped writing in the midst of a rain, like the rain now, and buried the notebook as a silent last will. Nora collapsed onto the wooden floor, clutching the notebook to her chest. There was no doubt. Her brother had encountered it, and it had spoken to him, not in words, but in memories. In the things most familiar to him, Emil spoke, his voice low. It doesn't kill right away. It wears you down. It persuades. It turns its victims into a part of itself. He looked toward the cabin door, rattling with each gust of wind. And if Logan became the gatekeeper, he might still be out there in the forest. But he's no longer him. Nora stood, wiping her tears with her sleeve. We have to go deeper. The notebook mentions a door. It could be a cave, a canyon, or somewhere not on any map. Emil hesitated. Are you sure? If we cross this line, we might not come back. Nora looked at him, her eyes blazing with determination. I didn't come here to come back. I came to know, and if Logan is still out there, I'll find him. Or die with the truth in my hands. Outside, the rain began to thin. In that brief silence, a faint sound came from outside the cabin. A knock, 3 taps, familiar, like the ones that haunted Travis's journal. Emil looked at Nora. It knows we're reading Logan's notebook. She gripped the notebook tightly and stepped out of the cabin. Then let it know, I'm not afraid. And the forest, like a breathing entity, responded with a suffocating, deadly silence. But both were ready to cross the final line into the heart of Bitter Wilds, where it was no longer human territory. They didn't return to the lodge. There was no reason to go back to safety, when safety had become an illusion. The moment Nora saw Logan's eyes in the first video, as darkness swallowed the forest and the last traces of light retreated below the horizon, Nora and Emil returned to the old cabin, not as a destination, but as a starting point. They decided to camp inside, setting up audio recorders and infrared cameras in 4 directions, aiming the lenses toward the area Logan called the door. The cabin was damp and stifling. They laid out sleeping bags, but neither planned to sleep. Nora sat against the wall, clutching Logan's notebook, as if letting go would make both her and her brother's memory vanish into the forest delirium. Emil quietly checked the equipment one last time, his eyes tense with focus. He placed an infrasound detector at the entrance, a rudimentary device used to measure natural electromagnetic interference, often employed in environmental acoustics research. You know, Emil whispered. Some theories suggest forests can trap low-frequency sound waves strong enough to affect the human brain, cause confusion, hallucinations, even awaken memories you thought were gone. Nora didn't look at him. She replied softly, I'm not hallucinating. I remember every expression on Logan's face, the way he hummed songs while washing dishes, and I know he's still here. Outside, the forest had sunk completely into darkness. No moonlight, no insect sounds, only absolute silence. Near 1 a.m., Emil stood to check the equipment outside. Nora stayed in the cabin, eyes glued to the infrared camera's live feed. A black and white forest appeared, distorted by weak light. She stared intently, then froze. In the left corner of the screen, a figure stood, motionless, unblinking, a hazy shape, standing between 2 trees, as if it had been there for a long, long time. Nora gasped, rewinding the footage. For over 10 minutes, the figure hadn't moved. Its neck was slightly tilted to the left, arms hung limp. The face wasn't clear, but the build, small, like a teenager listening. At that moment, the infrasound detector beeped. The screen showed interference. Frequencies fluctuated erratically. Emil rushed in from outside. I saw something north. A figure standing between 2 trees. Nora pointed at the screen. I saw it too. They switched to the second camera. Now the figure was closer, only 5 meters from the lens. But what was more terrifying was its movement. It didn't walk like a human. It glided across the ground, silent, without friction. A figure cut and pasted into the scene. "Logan," Nora whispered. Emil shook his head. "No, it's not Logan anymore." They froze, watching the screen as the figure raised its hand, pointing at the camera, just like in the earlier video. But this time, the feed didn't cut out. The figure stood there, pointing, silent. Then, the audio recorder began to play a sound, not speech. A melody, a childish lullaby, repeating over and over. Nora went still. "That's the lullaby my mom sang to Logan before bed." Emil paled. "Impossible. This device can't play sounds on its own." The sound lingered for a few seconds, then stopped. The screen glitched heavily. The camera shut off abruptly. All devices went black simultaneously. The cabin plunged into total darkness. Outside, a footstep sounded, slow, distinct. 1 step, pause. 2 steps, pause. Nora gripped Emil's hand. "It's coming." The wooden door creaked, as if touched. Emil raised his flashlight, his hand shaking so much the beam danced wildly. But outside, there was no one, nothing but the forest, and silence. Then, 3 knocks on the cabin door. Low, unhurried, like a ritual, repeated for decades. Nora slowly approached the door, her hand on the wooden latch. Emil gently pulled her arm, whispering, "If you open it, we might never come back." She turned to him, eyes red but calmer than ever. "He's been knocking for 25 years. It's time someone answered." And she opened the door. Outside, only forest. But in the clearing, Logan stood, his face unchanged, eyes locked on her. His mouth didn't move, but Nora heard his voice in her mind. "You came." She didn't scream, didn't cry. She took 1 step out of the cabin. Emil followed, gripping the camera. In that moment, they understood. They'd crossed the line. No longer outsiders. They were the ones called by name. And the forest, with its 1,000 leafy eyes and forgotten memories, opened its door to them. 2 days after disappearing from the wooden cabin in Bitterwilds, Emil reappeared suddenly. A long-haul truck driver found him early one morning, walking along Highway 12, nearly 40 miles south of Ash Pines, clothes tattered, barefoot, eyes vacant, as if he'd fallen out of an ancient dream. Emil couldn't fully recall what happened. At least, that's what he told police in his preliminary statement. But in his mind, one image lingered. Nora's final glance back at him, before she walked into the thick fog with Logan. Emil didn't go home. He went straight to the University of Montana's Central Library, where classified Cold War-era documents were stored. And he began searching for a name, hidden from all public records. Project Bitterwilds. He found it, not in the official catalog, but in a mislabeled archive box. Inside were decaying documents, many pages blacked out with ink, but what remained was enough to piece together a horrifying truth. Bitterwilds, from 1967 to 1973, was the site of a top-secret military research program, funded by the U.S. Army, initially called Project Echo Silent, later renamed Project Bitterwilds, when moved to Montana. Its goal to study the effects of infrasound and subsonic frequencies on human perception in isolated environments. One technical report stated clearly, frequencies below 20 Hz, when emitted continuously in a dense forest, cause disorientation, memory distortion, visual hallucinations, and a sense of being watched. Initial animal tests showed highly unstable results. Some cases exhibited behavioral disorders and attacked each other. But what made Emil's hair stand on end was a handwritten note at the end of Report 14, Final Test October, 1973. Recorded a case of artificial memory. Subject B3 claimed to see their father, deceased for 10 years. No one in the team recalled ever meeting B3. The next page had just one scrawled line in red ink. The forest reflects the mind. Emil felt a chill down his spine. What he and Nora had seen in the cabin, the voices, the faces that appeared, weren't supernatural in a superstitious sense, but memories brought to life. Distorted, repeated. Bitterwilds wasn't just a forest, it was a biological cognitive structure, where reality could be bent by what people desired, feared, or regretted most. He read on to the final record. It was a report by Dr. Howard Kell, the man Eckhart had mentioned. Written days before he vanished. Experiment 6. A security guard heard his mother's lullaby at 3 a.m. His mother died in 1961. No one else heard it, but the area's audio recording showed a signal at 18.6 Hz, lasting 11 minutes. I believe Bitterwilds doesn't just amplify infrasound, it retains fragments of consciousness that once existed here. Each person enters the forest with their own pain, and the forest reflects it in living images. No one should return. Attached was a hand-drawn diagram, a natural tunnel structure beneath Clearwater Basin, called the Biological Vortex Gate, a deepest point where sound was trapped forever and time was warped. Emil closed the documents, his mind reeling. So Nora, could she have reached that point? And if her memories were strong enough to trigger a response, was Logan, or the thing wearing Logan's form, a living memory sustained by the forest? He wasn't sure, but the one thing he knew was he couldn't stay silent. Emil extracted all the documents, scanned them, and sent them to an independent research network. Along with his own statement, "I believe Logan Hart never died." He became part of Bitterwilds, and Nora may have accepted that truth. She didn't seek Logan to bring him back. She sought to take his place. He recorded a final video, eyes sunken, hands still trembling, and sent it to a close friend who was a journalist. "I can't fully explain what I saw, but I can say this. There are places in this world not meant for humans to understand. Bitterwilds is one of them. There, the line between life and death, real and unreal, doesn't exist. It doesn't need demons. It needs our pain to live. If you ever hear someone call your name in the forest, don't answer." He paused, closing his eyes. "I answered. And I'm still here. But I don't know who I am anymore." After sending it, Emil stood, left the library, and took no papers with him. Montana's sky was gray and heavy, the clouds ready to burst. He didn't go home. He turned onto the trail leading back to Bitterwilds once more, because a voice in his head, soft, distant, but clear, said, "We're not done yet, Emil." And he walked on, step by step, toward the place no one should return to, where the truth wasn't in words, but in the memories that refused to fade. When the first pale dawn of winter touched Bitterwilds, snow began to fall. Small, dry flakes silently blanketed the ground, the trees, and the trail leading deep into the forest, where no one dared to pass. Days after Emil vanished a second time, the Ash Pines Ranger team launched an extensive search, but found nothing but interrupted footprints near Clearwater's edge. No body, no gear, no clues. Only a handheld recorder, found tilted under a tree, its lens pointed at an empty forest clearing. Its battery was nearly drained. When technicians recovered the data from the memory card, they found a 3-minute 27-second video. It began with the sound of wind. The footage was shaky, flickering. The lens panned, briefly catching Emil standing in the forest, shivering with cold. His voice whispered, "I think I'm close. If someone finds this, listen carefully." He turned the camera, pointing it toward a snow-covered rock formation. Behind it was a figure, Nora. She wore a brown coat, her hair loose, her gaze fixed on the distance. The wind lifted her hair slightly, but she didn't look at the camera. She was staring at something the lens couldn't capture. Emil asked, his voice nearly breaking, "What do you see?" Nora answered without turning, "He's standing there, right where I dropped my necklace in 1997. The lens panned to where her hand gestured. Nothing. Just a foggy forest, but the audio began to change. The wind stopped. A lullaby sounded, faint and muffled. The same lullaby Nora had mentioned. No one spoke for the next 30 seconds. Then the camera shook violently. The screen trembled. A black streak flashed close to the lens. Emil shouted. Nora turned, her eyes wide. But instead of fear, she smiled, faintly. She said, "Logan opened the door," and then she stepped out of the frame, alone. The camera kept recording the forest for another 17 seconds. No one spoke, no sound. Then it cut off. 3 weeks later, the case of Emil Saunders and Nora Hart's disappearance was officially shelved, just like the 3 teens' case in 1998. The police offered no concrete conclusions. Local media dubbed it the Bitterwilds Loop. But one person refused to stay silent. April Chen, Emil's ecology team colleague, began digging through every record. One night, she received an anonymous package containing a hand-drawn map with symbols matching Logan's and a small note with one line, "You're next." April vanished 12 days later. No one found her, But in the mailbox of the Ash Pines Tribune's office, a handwritten letter arrived with no recipient address. It offered no explanations, no apologies. Just a short journal entry, in unfamiliar, trembling handwriting. I don't think the forest kills anyone. It keeps them. Like a living organism, it stores fragments of forgotten souls. Those who enter carry wounds, and the forest makes those wounds take form. Logan wasn't lost. He stayed because no one let him out. Nora didn't find him because he'd become part of the forest. Emil understood, but too late. I don't know who I am anymore. I only know I hear all their voices every night since I touched the pine carved with TML. They don't cry. They don't scream. They just whisper. That we never heard the full story. The letter ended with a crooked line at the page's edge. No one returns, but no one truly leaves. In 2024, Montana authorities permanently closed Trail 3 and Clearwater Basin, labeling it a potential biohazard zone. All access points were barricaded with steel and guarded. But Ash Pines locals whisper that on some nights, lights still flicker in the forest, and a soft lullaby echoes through the fog, precisely at 3:27 a.m. No one approaches. No one answers. But everyone knows, Bitterwilds doesn't want to be forgotten. And when a place has claimed your soul, no matter how far you go, it will always whisper your name forever. Perhaps you've heard someone say they saw a figure standing in the forest, motionless, staring at them. Perhaps you've heard 3 knocks in the night, with no one outside the door. Maybe you've felt watched while walking a trail. Don't look back, because Bitterwilds only needs you to remember it. It doesn't need you to believe. It only needs one thing: don't answer when it calls your name. The story, Teen Friends Vanished, during hiking trip in 1998. 25 years later, a hidden camera captures movement in the same area, is not just a thrilling journey into Bitterwilds, but also a reflection of profound real-world obsessions with memory, loss, and the need to confront truth, themes deeply relevant to American society today. When Nora Hart returns to the forest after 25 years to find her brother Logan, who vanished with 2 friends on a hiking trip, she's not only seeking external truth, but embarking on a journey to reclaim justice for abandoned memories, a common struggle in modern America where missing persons cases, unresolved crimes, and cold cases pile up, often neglected. Critical details, like the cover-up of Project Bitterwilds, a classified military experiment, highlight issues of transparency and the public's right to truth. It's a stark warning that when society chooses silence over mysteries, pain and trauma fester across generations. Like Nora, thousands of families in America still await answers about missing loved ones, especially in marginalized communities. The story's clear lesson is, we cannot forget what remains unanswered. In a modern society overflowing with information and technology, continuing to seek truth, preserve memory, and hold on to hope is essential. Because sometimes, memory and love are the only things left in the gaps of silence. If you believe some stories must be told to their end, hit subscribe to stay with us for the next journey into truth. Thank you for joining us in Bitterwilds. See you in the next video, where memories still echo and mysteries never sleep.